Buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into a Kenyan divorce case that is going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about marriage and money.
And fairness.
Yeah, when a relationship goes south.
It really gets you thinking, like, what is fair?
Right. What even is fair?
Exactly.
So picture this.
Okay.
We're in Nairobi, Kenya, and a wife is demanding 30 million shillings in maintenance, plus a house worth 60 million shillings.
That's a lot.
I know. And that's not all she's claiming. She needs like 200,000 shillings a month.
Per month?
Just to cover her rent and bills.
What?
Even for her pet dog.
Oh, my goodness. This sounds like a juicy one.
Oh, yeah. And what's crazy is this isn't just some, rich couple's drama.
Right.
It actually like opens a window into Kenyan law and how society views marriage and who's responsible for what financially.
It's so interesting how these cases can reveal so much about a culture's values.
Totally. So let's back up a bit.
Okay.
Who are these people living this seemingly lavish lifestyle? We're talking about a couple who got married way back in 1993. They had 2 kids, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
Lived in a swanky neighborhood in Nairobi. But then in 2008, things went sour.
Okay.
And the accusations started flying.
Yikes.
So the wife, she's claiming cruelty and adultery.
Oh, wow.
But the husband, he's saying, no, she left me for another man.
Classic.
It's messy.
It is messy.
It sounds like a recipe for a legal battle.
It definitely is. And to really understand this whole thing, we have to look at Kenyan law.
Okay.
So the Matrimonial Causes Act in Kenya that allows for one spouse to pay maintenance to the other after a divorce.
So that's where that comes into play.
Exactly. But at the same time, you have Article 45 of the Constitution, which emphasizes equality between spouses.
So how do they balance those two things?
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Especially in a case like this.
Absolutely, because it's not just about the law. It's about real people with real emotions and all this financial stuff.
Yeah, it's not black and white.
Exactly.
So we've got a couple with these totally different stories.
All right.
Accusations flying around.
Yeah.
And the legal system trying to figure out what's fair.
It's a tough job.
So let's unpack the wife's side of the story first.
Okay. She basically said she was living this life of luxury with cooks and drivers and even security guards.
Oh, wow.
She argued that there's no way she could support herself at 54.
Okay.
And needed a significant amount of money from her ex to keep even a fraction of her old lifestyle.
That 178,000 shillings a month for rent.
Right. It's a lot.
It's eye-catching.
Yeah. No wonder this case caught everyone's attention.
Totally. But then the husband, he painted a completely different picture.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
He claimed he was basically broke.
Broke?
Living off a tiny pension, just 10,000 shillings a year.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
That's a huge difference.
And he even said his last name was causing him to be treated unfairly in court.
Seriously?
Yeah, and his stance was that his wife, she's totally capable of getting a job and supporting herself.
So it's like a he said, she said situation.
Completely with infidelity claims and hidden wealth accusations from both sides.
It's getting messy.
But did either of them actually give any hard evidence?
That's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Neither of them provided clear financial records.
So the judge is just supposed to take their word for it?
It seems like it, which made it really hard for the judge to figure out the truth.
Oh, man, that's got to be frustrating for a judge.
I can imagine.
So what happened? What did the judge decide?
Well, get this. The judge sided with the wife.
Really?
Yeah. Ordered the husband to pay a lump sum of 30 million shillings in maintenance.
Wow.
And he also had to provide her with a house in a fancy area like Runda or Karen, or pay another 60 million shillings instead.
So basically 90 million shillings if he can't find the right house.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That's a huge win for the wife.
For sure.
But you said the court wasn't totally convinced by either side's financial claims?
Yeah, it seems like they thought he was hiding money.
Interesting. So the judge basically penalized him for not being upfront.
It seems that way.
So the lack of transparency backfired.
Big time.
Wow, this case just keeps getting more and more interesting.
It really does.
So what happened next? Did the husband just accept this massive judgment?
Oh, no, he wasn't going down without a fight.
Of course not.
He appealed the decision, arguing that it was totally unfair.
That makes sense.
And that's where things get even juicier.
Okay, so we've got courtroom drama accusations of hidden millions and a shocking verdict. And now we're moving into the appeal.
This is where the case really starts to reveal some key legal principles that go way beyond this one couple.
This is getting good, so tell me more about what went down during the appeal.
Well, the higher court took a long, hard look at everything.
Okay.
They acknowledged that both sides were kind of shady with their finances.
So nobody's innocent here.
Right, but what they decided would actually change the whole landscape of divorce settlements in Kenya.
Really?
It brought up some really important legal points.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me everything.
I will, but first let's take a quick break, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the appeal when we come back. Okay, so the husband appeals, right?
Right.
And the higher court, they come in and they're like, hold on a second, let's take a closer look at this.
So what did they find? What were the big takeaways from their decision?
Well, they didn't completely overturn the first ruling,
Okay.
but they did send it back to the lower court.
Interesting. So they were like, try again.
Yeah, with some guidance, though.
Okay.
Kind of a legal do-over.
Yeah, like, hey, you guys missed a few things here. Go back and look at it again.
So did the lower court end up, like, lowering those payments?
They did make some adjustments,
Okay.
but they still gave the wife a pretty big sum of money.
I see.
It wasn't quite as high as the original $30 million, but
So not a total win for the husband, but at least he gained some relief.
yeah,
I guess that's why it's important to appeal if you really think something's unfair.
absolutely. It's a really important part of the process, you know?
Yeah. It makes sure that everything is double-checked and that the judgment really lines up with the law.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So beyond the specifics of this case, though, what were those big principles that came out of the appeal?
Okay, so the higher court, they really emphasize that those maintenance payments, they're not about keeping up a fancy lifestyle.
Okay.
They're about genuine need.
Oh, basic support, not like a continuation of the high life.
Exactly, it's not supposed to be a reward or a punishment.
Right.
It's about making sure that basic needs are met.
Totally. And did it say anything about, like, who's responsible for earning money after a divorce?
Oh, yeah. They made it super clear that both spouses have a responsibility to support themselves after a split.
Okay.
It's not like one person gets to just coast on the other person's income.
Right. It's not a free ride.
No, it's a shared responsibility to figure out how to move forward financially.
Okay. So divorce doesn't mean someone gets to just relax and let the other person handle everything.
Right, exactly. The court really wanted to emphasize that idea of equality.
Like we were talking about before.
Yeah, that Article 45 of the Kenyan Constitution.
I see. So they were really hammering home that point.
They were.
So the appeal clarified those big points. Maintenance is about need, not like entitlement.
Yeah.
And both people are responsible for themselves.
Well.
But was there anything else that came out of that appeal that we should know about?
Oh, yeah. The appeal court, they made it crystal clear
Okay.
that hiding money from the court is a big no-no.
Okay.
Like, you can't try to cheat the system.
Yeah.
Transparency is key.
So basically, don't try to be sneaky with your finances.
Exactly. It will backfire.
This case really shows us how important it is to be upfront about money in a marriage.
It really does, and not just during the marriage,
Yeah.
even when you're getting a divorce.
Yeah. So what did the appeal court say about, like, how to figure out what need actually means when you're calculating these payments?
Right. Because that's kind of a subjective thing.
Yeah, what one person needs might be different from what someone else needs.
Exactly. They didn't give a strict formula or
Right.
anything. But they did say to look at things like how long the marriage was, how much each person contributed,
Okay.
and the earning capacity of both parties.
So it's not just about who has the bigger paycheck.
It's not just about that.
It's more about the whole picture of the relationship
Exactly.
and their ability to support themselves.
Exactly. Divorce settlements, they're really about finding a balance,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that both sides are treated fairly
Okay.
and that they have what they need to move on with their lives.
So about the house, did the appeal court say that the husband still had to give her a place to live?
They did agree that he should contribute to her housing,
Right.
but they didn't say that he had to give her a house in a super fancy neighborhood.
Yeah.
They basically said, figure out a fair housing arrangement,
Okay.
one that takes into account how much money both people have.
Okay. So they were like, use your judgment.
Yeah, and also remember those principles of need and equality.
Yeah, it sounds like the appeal court was trying to make sure that the final decision was fair and not just about punishing the husband for being dishonest.
They wanted to move away from that idea of winners and losers in a divorce.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And really focus on finding a solution that allowed both people to move on.
With their dignity and financial security.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to achieve a fair outcome.
Not to keep the fighting going.
Right.
So this whole Kenyan divorce story, it's not just some interesting legal drama.
It's more than.
It's a lesson for all of us
Yeah,
about being responsible with our money and being honest with our partners.
absolutely. And it shows how divorce law is changing
Yeah.
and how courts are trying to make sure things are fair for both people.
What about like the public reaction to this case? I feel like this would have been a big deal in Kenya.
Oh, yeah, it was huge.
Okay.
People were talking about it everywhere.
So it sparked some important conversations.
Definitely about gender roles and what people expect in a marriage financially.
Okay.
And the role of the courts in all of this.
It wasn't just a legal issue, it was a social one too.
Yeah, it really touched on those deeper societal norms and values.
So people had different opinions about it.
They did. Some people felt like the wife was asking for way too much, like she was being entitled, while others felt like she deserved a good settlement.
Right, she contributed to the marriage.
Yeah, for years, and they were like, she deserves to maintain a decent standard of living.
So it really divided people.
It did.
Yeah, and brought up different views about marriage and divorce and responsibility.
Absolutely, and what a fair divorce even means.
Right.
Because that's not always clear.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
Yeah, it does.
So this case is more than just gossip.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that legal stuff is often tied up with these really complicated social issues and personal beliefs.
And it shows that we need to keep having these conversations about relationships and finances and how the law fits into all of that.
Speaking of the law, did this case actually change anything in Kenya legally? Did it set any precedents?
It actually did have a big impact on divorce cases that came after it. It reinforced that idea that maintenance should be about real need.
Okay.
And not about trying to live the same lifestyle you had before.
Yeah.
And it really underlined how important it is to be transparent with your money.
Okay.
And that both spouses are responsible for contributing financially after a divorce.
So this case wasn't just a one-time thing.
Mm-hmm.
It shaped the legal landscape for future divorces.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It set a precedent that courts have been following.
Wow.
Emphasizing those ideas of need, equality, and transparency.
So we've talked about the facts, the judgment, the appeal.
Yeah.
The final outcome. But I'm still curious, like, why did the court ultimately decide to give the wife that large sum of money, even after the appeal?
What do you mean?
Like, what were the specific factors they looked at?
Well, even though the husband said he was broke, the court, they found some clues that suggested he had more money than he was letting on.
Okay, so they did some digging.
Yeah, they looked at the couple's lifestyle.
Okay.
What they owned, any potential ways they could be making money.
So they pieced together a more accurate picture.
Yeah, they did some detective work.
And they decided that the husband could afford to support his ex-wife.
Yeah, even if it wasn't as much as she first asked for.
So they tried to be fair.
They tried to find an equitable solution.
Okay, so it wasn't just about his stated income. It was about his overall financial situation.
Exactly.
This brings up an interesting question, though. Like, even if one person earns way more than the other in a marriage, does that automatically mean they have to pay huge amounts in maintenance after a divorce?
Not always. Income is definitely something that courts look at.
Right.
But it's not the only thing.
Okay.
They'll also consider, like we talked about, the length of the marriage, what each person contributed, and if both people have the potential to earn money.
So it's not a simple calculation.
Not at all.
It's about finding a balance.
Yeah.
Making sure everyone is treated fairly and has what they need to keep going.
Exactly.
This whole case really shows just how complicated divorce law can be.
It's true.
And how courts have to really carefully consider everything when it comes to money.
They do.
But I think it's also a reminder for all of us that communication and being open about money are so important in any relationship.
100%. Just talking about finances.
Right.
Being honest, being on the same page.
Yeah.
That can prevent so many problems down the road.
Absolutely. And maybe even make your relationship stronger.
Yeah, because when you're open and honest with each other, that builds trust.
It does.
So this Kenyan divorce, it might seem far away, but it has lessons for all of us.
No matter where we live or what our relationship is like.
Yeah, it makes you think.
It really does. And it's been such an interesting look into the Kenyan legal system.
It has.
A huge thank you to you for breaking it all down for us.
It's been my pleasure. I love these deep dives.
We do.
They're fascinating.
They are.
Because it reminds us that the law, it's not just about rules.
Yeah.
It's about real people with real emotions and a lot of drama sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of drama.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to chew on.
Okay.
If you could change one thing about how divorce is handled legally or just socially, what would it be?
That's a good question.
Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah.
We love hearing from you.
We do.
So we'll be back soon with another deep dive.
We will.
Until then, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
This case really opens up a lot of questions about Marriage and money, huh?
Yeah, it does.
Not just in Kenya, but everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it really highlights that tension between two really important principles.
Okay.
On one hand, you have that idea of marriage as a partnership,
Okay.
shared journey.
Like all for one and one for all.
Exactly. Building a life together.
Right, so your finances should be intertwined.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, we have this modern focus on individual autonomy and equality,
Right.
especially for women.
Yeah.
That idea that even in a marriage,
Yeah.
you should be able to be financially independent.
Exactly.
So how do courts reconcile those two ideas?
Especially when a marriage ends.
Yeah, it's like a tug of war.
Yeah, that's the million-shilling question.
Right.
And this case shows there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
The Kenyan courts, they're trying to find that balance.
Okay.
They're recognizing that marriage is a partnership,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't trap someone in financial dependence,
Especially if things have gone bad.
especially if the relationship is over.
It's like the law is trying to catch up with how relationships are changing.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. We're moving away from those traditional roles.
Right.
Like the breadwinner and the homemaker.
Exactly.
Though the rules about money, they have to adapt too.
They do, and I think we're going to see even more legal challenges
Right.
as more couples have these non-traditional arrangements.
Okay.
Different ways of handling their finances.
And that's why cases like this are so important to talk about.
Yeah, because they force us to examine our own assumptions about marriage and money and fairness.
Yeah, even if we're not getting divorced ourselves.
Exactly. It's relevant to everyone.
So what's the one big takeaway our listeners should remember from this whole conversation?
If I had to sum it up,
Yeah.
it's that clarity is king,
Okay.
both in your relationships and with your finances.
Makes sense.
Be open about money.
Right.
Set clear expectations.
Okay.
Document everything properly.
Not the most romantic advice.
Maybe not, but it can save you a lot of trouble later on.
Yeah, and being transparent like that could actually make your relationship stronger.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Right? Because trust comes from honesty and understanding each other.
Exactly.
So even though this Kenyan divorce might seem like something that has nothing to do with us,
Yeah,
it really does have lessons for everyone.
it does.
No matter where we live or what our relationship status is.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Well, this has been a fascinating look into the Kenyan legal system.
Thank you so much for explaining all of this to us.
My pleasure. I always enjoy these deep dives.
Me too. And they remind us that law is about real people
Yeah,
and real emotions.
absolutely.
And sometimes
A lot of drama.
a lot of drama.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this episode. But before we go,
Okay.
I want to leave you with one last question to think about.
Okay.
If you could change one thing about how divorce is handled legally or socially, what would it be?
That's a good one.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive.
We will.
Until then, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, knowledge is power.
See you next time.